it to his disciples in such a way that they could disseminate it to the rest of the world. Because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was an acharya. Although Gaudiya Vaishnavas see that he's Krishna himself and prove it through scripture, they also understand that he's an acharya. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared 500 years ago, and he, at the middle portion of his life, dedicated himself to spreading the Krishna consciousness movement. Make it colder in here, please. I'm micromanaging today. Or maybe every day. So in his teachings to his disciples, he described the threefold miseries. As if one category wouldn't be enough. There are three categories of miseries which he described, and they're worth looking at. So first he said that there's adhyatmik. That means, atma means self. And so adhyatmik miseries means miseries that are caused due to the way in which my mind or my body works. Now, Bhakti True Swami last night was explaining how if you examine any part of your body, you can see that it could cause you pain, but not just a little pain, a lot of pain. The mind is notorious for invoking anxiety, and the body itself, it's a delicate machine, and of course we're unlimitedly grateful to have such an apparatus, but still it's incompatible with my nature, and it's in a constant state of flux, and it also falls apart, and it causes pain and suffering. If you simply described with the letter A the different kinds of diseases you can get, start with A, what would be? What? Alzheimer's. Anything else? Anemia? What? Arthritis? Anxiety? Anorexia? There's a lot of A's, a lot of B's. I tried this experiment recently, and we never came to the end of it. And we just got to C also. We probably explored only 1% of the possible things we could say off the top of our mind, what to speak of the ones that are actually on record somewhere. So the body is described by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as an environment which causes me suffering, and the mind also. So adhyatmic, and then there's adhibautic, which means that there are other living entities who can cause me trouble or misery. Can you think of anyone, any other living entities that might cause misery? Mice? Okay. Cute little mice. They might do something to you. What? Team members. Your own team members. People have a hard time working together because they're all individuals and they have their own ideas about how to do things. You look around the world and you see that the world's divided into little segments, and everyone has a flag and said, this is the way we want to do it. And the other people say, no, this is the way we want to do it. And then at intervals they argue and can even enter into war and so forth. What else? What? The boss. Yeah, you can have a bad boss. Neighbors. Yeah, the list goes on and on. There's a way in which our interaction with other people, and then what is called adidaivik. He said that the environment is beyond our control. In other words, there's excessive heat in some places, excessive cold in others. Of course, not here in California. Everything's perfect, except for when an earthquake comes and knocks down everything that you worked for. There's a way in which the environment can be a cause of difficulty, and so he said that there's always at least one of these three going on for us in the world. And very graphically, there's a description of personification of material energy, Durga. And she rides on a tigress, and she holds a trident, which has 3 sharp points. And if you look at pictures of Durga, you'll see that she's holding on to me and jabbing with the trident. The threefold miseries are coming regularly. This isn't simply out of a sense of wanting to torture others, but it's a kind of a reminder that this material world is in our home, also that we are just passing through. If you see a red light on your dashboard, it doesn't mean the end of the world, it just means you better attend to something. So there's a lot of warnings that we get that this material world is in our home, temporary place. So just establishing the fact that there are miseries and adjusting one's expectations. If one thinks that I'll be able to live without one of the threefold miseries being in my life at any given time, then the Bhagavad Gita, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna asks us to reassess. And he said, don't think that if you moved to another place, where else could you move to? Boise sounds nice. You go to Boise and then it'll be perfect there, right? Josh? Yes? Maybe, maybe not. There's a sense that I might develop that if I could find some other place, then I'll find some refuge, some happiness. And there's in the broader scope of the universe, there's a sense that there are higher, well, not the sense, there are divisions of higher and lower realms in which there is a better situation. But Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Brahma bhuvana loka punar avartanojuna mamupetya tukonteya punar janma nividyate. He certifies that from the highest realm in the material world down to the lowest, there's these threefold miseries. They're included with the entire material package, no matter where you go. Whether you take birth as a deva, or as a human being, or in a lower planetary system, all these have their built-in troubles and miseries. So therefore this verse begins with dukeshu, in the threefold miseries. So this verse is going to describe a person who is within the threefold miseries, but who also has fixed consciousness, and how he or she adjusts to that situation. So the next word in the verse, anuvigna manaha. So that is anuvigna manaha, without being agitated in mind. So the Bhagavad Gita, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes that the mind is like a factory, and it's constantly creating unnecessary necessities. And this is one of the causes of great anxiety. So he says at the outset of this description of a person with fixed consciousness, prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atman yeva manatushta stita pragnas tadochite. Tadochite means this is a person who is called fixed in mind, is one who gives up all kinds of attachment to the desires that the mind is manufacturing as if in a factory. Are they going to put the other screen down? I don't want to know what he's doing. Why doesn't he have that down? Prajahati yada kaman. So kaman means desires, and the mind is constantly creating these desires. And sarvan partha manogatan. Manogatan again describes the mind. It says the mind goes. It's constantly running. And he says when a person is able to step away from the mind and see that it's like a movie running on a screen, and it's putting forth various false narratives. And one can notice that for oneself in an objective way. And at the same time he says, Atman yevatmana tushta. Tushta means satisfaction. That person is able to find satisfaction in his self. That person, he said, is called a person who has attained this state of self-realization or steadiness of mind. And here we have anuvigna manaha. So this is without being agitated in mind. So this is again describing that the self-realized person has transcended the turbulence of the mind and is able to look within and see that he or she is separate from the mind. Then sukeshu vigata spriha. So now we already heard about dukeshu, which means distress or unhappiness. And now sukeshu. Sukeshu means happiness. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna names sukh or happiness and dukh as, in one sense, being on an equal level because both of them, in the material sense, are temporary. I may experience some temporary happiness in this world, but because it has an ending, later I suffer. And according to the quality of the material happiness that I get, it may be more or less suffering. For instance, later in the Gita, Krishna describes how there's happiness that is created from my contact with the mode of tamas, or darkness. That's the lowest of the three modalities that Krishna says pervade this world. Above that is rajas, which is a passion, and if I enjoy passionate happiness, that has a certain quality, and sattva, or goodness, that has a certain kind of a quality also. So what are the qualities? In tamas or darkness, actually, there's no happiness at all. You can't get any sense of happiness. But in passion, Krishna says, the happiness is like nectar in the beginning and poison at the end. In other words, it seems like a good idea at the moment. And I engage in something that gives me some happiness and pleasure, but then later on, I have to suffer for it. This is happiness that comes from rajas. Is that possible? Yeah, that can happen. Then happiness in the mode of sattva, or goodness. This is described by Krishna in the Gita as being like poison in the beginning and nectar at the end. It means that there's some sacrifice at the beginning, but later on you feel a sense of happiness because of performing it. So there's different qualities of happiness in the material world, but all of them are subject to being mixed with the lower modes of material nature at any time. And the happiness in the material world, especially that which comes by contact with the senses and their objects, including the mind, which is called the sense within, is a kind of happiness that comes and goes. So Krishna says in the Gita, 5th chapter, Yehi samsparshaja bhoga dukkha yonaya evate adyantavanta konteya na teshu ramate buddha. And that means that a person who's very intelligent doesn't take part in the sources of misery which are due to contact of the senses and their objects, because that kind of happiness has a beginning and an end. Adyantavanta. It begins and then it ends at a certain point. Therefore, the person says this isn't real happiness. It's just an imaginary happiness. We find in the Srimad Bhagavatam, one of the quintessential literature on bhakti, that Prahlad Maharaj, who's a boy saint, he's 5 years old, and he offers very insightful prayers to Lord Nrsingadev. And in those prayers he says that kutra shisha, when he's speaking about this kind of material happiness that I'm discussing now, he asks this question, kutra, where is it? Everybody's talking about it, but I don't see it. Kutra shisha, it's well known that somewhere, somehow I'm going to get a benediction from this material happiness, but kutra, where is it? And then he describes it as shruti sukham. He said it's happiness that you hear about, but you never actually get. And therefore, the idea of happiness is there in the material world, but I'm always pursuing it, much like I might run after mirage in the desert and never actually get it. There's an idea that there's water that might quench my thirst, but I can never actually reach it. So this happiness in the material world is like that. It's temporary, there's a beginning and end, or it's illusory. I think about it, but I never actually get it. The idea seems okay, but once I attain the objects of my desire, they become more of a burden to me than I had expected. The idea of having something is usually more pleasurable than actually having the thing itself, because actually things are just things. And they all do the same thing, which is that they go through a process of degradation over time, and we lose them, and they change. So, next he says, Vitaraga Bhaya Krodha. So this combination of words means that this person that's being described, that's fixed in consciousness, and this is one of the goals of yoga, is to attain this state. And through the practice that's prescribed here in ISKCON, one can attain this through the basic practices of yoga. So Vitaraga Bhaya Krodha, that one becomes free from raga. Raga means undue attachment to the material world. Undue means we have to have a certain amount of interaction with it because we live here, and we also have obligations. And artificially, one cannot simply dump these things and walk away. Any artificial attempt at spiritual advancement will not be fruitful. One will simply end up in the same place that one started, or worse. Krishna describes in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, in his conversation with Uddhava, that sometimes people think the tongue is very voracious, and it's always demanding that I say things that I shouldn't say, or that I eat things that I shouldn't eat, or I eat too much. So then somebody might say, then I'll fast. So someone fasts, and he doesn't give anything to the tongue for several days. And then Krishna says, then the yogi finds out that the tongue comes back and demands more. And says, okay, you starved me, now I want twice as much. And so it's not such an easy thing. One can't simply artificially say, I'm going to give up the material world and walk away. First of all, the concept itself is not philosophically accurate. Because if you could turn the gain down, you just clicked it up a little bit, put it back, please. Because it's not ours to renounce. If I walk into Wells Fargo and ask them, because they're feeling a little vulnerable right now because all the mistakes they made. So if I walked in, I said, I renounce this bank. Still, they'd look at me like I'm crazy because it's not my bank. So similarly, the idea of renouncing the material world is also a mistaken idea. It's not mine to renounce. So Astita Muni, a person who's fixed in consciousness, understands that there's nothing in the world to renounce, and there's nothing actually to claim as my own, either side. So the Stita Muni is situated in a service and sees everything in the world as an object to serve our original divine source, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In service mind, one can find equilibrium, homeostasis, a way in which one can stay steady without being affected by the wild swings of happiness and distress, stress. This is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in the context of this discussion of happiness, distress, described that one is on a pendulum, and that is between two extremes. One is called bhoga, and the other is called tyaga. So bhoga means material enjoyment. As soon as I get a little well situated in the material world, my next thought is that I'm the supreme enjoyer. you're healthy, you have a full bank account, refrigerator's full, there's gas in the car, and it might come to mind, weather's nice. It might come to my mind that, maybe I can enjoy the material world. And I may have some optimism that I'll find a situation in the material world where I'm going to enjoy. And I may pursue that. This is called bhoga. And then the opposite side is called tyaga. Because inevitably, and this is a pattern which it repeats itself. I guess that's mainly what patterns do, but there's a way in which I search for happiness, and maybe I attain it to some degree, but then because it's not satisfactory, then I decide I'll renounce it all. So I wildly swing from one side to the next, from bhoga to tyaga, back and forth. So the path of balance is the path of dedication. It's seeing that everything that I have, including my mind and my body and all the facilities that I see in this world, are meant for service. If someone has this idea, then he or she has peace, actual shanti. There's no peace in bhoga and there's no peace in tyaga. They're both artificial situations. Therefore, it is mentioned in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Again, I'm talking about the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, how he taught his students. So it is mentioned there that a Krishna Bhakta Nishkam Ataiva Shanta Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami Sakali Ashanta. This is a very simple algebraic equation. And it says that the only person in this world who is actually satisfied, happy, is the one who sees with service mind. Is looking at the world and thinking, how can I use everything that I have? What kind of things do you have anyway? You have I'm sensing a high degree of intelligence in this room, and I'm right. They're all upwardly mobile kinds of people here. You have a high degree of intelligence you've been given. So that's an asset. It's been given to you. You didn't purchase it anywhere. It was just, it's inherent in you. So that's a gift you have. So that's something you can use for bhoga, right? Or you could just say, forget it, I'm not going to even use it at all. And tyaga, or you think about how to just give up everything. Or you can use your intelligence to think, how can I serve my original divine source, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead? And by the way, the Srimad Bhagavatam says, if you think like that, then you'll feel satisfaction. In the moment that I think, how can I please myself? You don't even have to endeavor for it. You'll start feeling dissatisfied. Because there's we have a innate sense that I can't be happy in the material world. Even though I try and try. I try to ignore it. And I go for it anyway. So Krishna Bhakta. This Krishna Bhakta means a person who recognizes that there's an original divine source, who's a person who has senses, a sentient being who's created everything. And that if I learn the art, which is called bhakti, of pleasing the original divine source, Krishna, then naturally I'll feel satisfied. And this is the life of the Krishna Bhakta. I feel satisfied. So Krishna Bhakta Nishkama. So the Krishna Bhakta is described as somebody who's Nishkama. So Nishkama means somebody who doesn't have any desire, self-desire, that I'm going to please myself. He's thinking, how can I please Krishna and render service? That person is Shanta, peaceful. Then he goes on to name other kinds of consciousness. Bhukti, Mukti, Siddhi Kami. So again, the word Kami is naming a person that has kama, or material desire to please themselves. So interestingly, he names these three categories. He says bhukti. Bhukti means somebody who wants material enjoyment. That I think by rearranging the material elements in any way that I can, that I will be able to find some satisfaction in that. What's the fallacy in that, would you say? Yes.
The fallacy is the chemistry of this world.
The chemistry.
Dukkha layam asasatam is the chemistry of this world. So no matter how
chemistry is wrong. Bad chemistry. Yeah. So the idea of bhakti is Krishna's divesting us of that idea that I can be happy by some kind of material interaction. It doesn't happen. Happiness doesn't come from that. And I think we talked about it a little bit already. So then mukti. Mukti means that I want to give up the material world. There's different ideas about mukti or liberation. One idea is that I will become nothing. So there are various philosophies, sometimes we call them nihilistic, that there's no actual self. It's called anatma. We say atma, and Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that we are all individuals perpetually. And even after, when the material body is destroyed, that individual unit of consciousness continues on in another situation, in another material body, which is made of both gross and subtle matter. And that even when one comes to the perfection of yoga, that one maintains one's individuality. However, there are other philosophers who say that yes, the material world is a temporary place, and my desire to enjoy it, therefore, brings me great misery. Therefore, the solution is to become nothing and realize that there is nothing, and that the material world is an illusory place that I've conjured. And as soon as I give up that conjured idea and come back to my original state of being nothing, I merge into a void, or there is just a void. It's not even, there's no verb there, merging, because there's nobody to merge. There's nothing ultimately. There are nuances to this, and there are many different varieties, but this is a sense that often people have. Because in some ways it's logical that the material world is temporary and miserable. Therefore, if I speculate and I say that the way to get out of this is to simply come to a state of nothingness. So this is not viable also, according to Krishna. The idea of mukti, of becoming nothing, is very much like a person going on strike because they don't like their work. You all don't do that because there's no more unions anymore. Most of them have been destroyed. But in the old days, back when I was a kid, there were unions, and sometimes they would go on strike and they would say, we don't like the conditions, and they'd walk around with signs and say, we're not working anymore. Only problem is, sooner or later they got to go back to work somewhere. Or if you're being chased by somebody and you run down an alley and run into a broom closet and slam the door and lock it, hey, you're in a broom closet. You can't stay there. In fact, the Srimad Bhagavatam describes the way in which various kinds of so-called mukti or liberation that don't include us developing a sense of relationship with our divine source, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are not tenable, which means we can't stick to them. Eventually we'll slip from that position. Yene ramrindakshava muktamani nastvayastabhavadavashuddha buddhaya aruya krishena paramparam tata patantyato nadrita yushmadangraya. This is a verse from the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is really getting into descriptions of relationships that bhaktas have with Krishna. And it's saying that if you devise other means of liberation besides becoming closer to Krishna in a mood of loving service, then whatever imagined type of liberation you attain will be short-lived. Or it may be long-lived also, but you'll definitely fall down from it. You'll slip from that position. Aruya Krishna Paramparam Tata Patantyada means again you'll fall down from the position. It's not a stable position. So those who pursue mukti, they also want something from themselves, and that is a kind of neutrality so that they don't have to suffer the pangs of material existence. And then there's what's called the siddhi. We don't know many siddhis these days. They were more common in days of yore. Because siddhis are people who take the time to cultivate yoga on a very, very deep level over many, many years. And there are descriptions of how one does this. In fact, people do it in different ways nowadays. They attain siddhis by studying, certain properties of nature. Like at Intel, people figure out how electrons work. Somebody did, some physicist, and now they're able to fit 3 billion transistors into one silicon space. That took some kind of merging with the material nature and figuring things out. But in any case, yogis can develop a very subtle sense of who they are by the practice of mystical yoga, and they can develop uncommon abilities and powers which seemingly defy nature. If you want to know how to do it, there's a description in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's a whole chapter on it that describes how to develop siddhis. But unfortunately, what to speak of developing the siddhis themselves, they don't even have time to read the chapter. But the problem is, when one starts to develop this uncanny sense of how to manipulate the material nature on a subtle level, oftentimes people become attached to it. It becomes another distraction for them. And so these three, bhukti, mukti, siddhi, they're called kamis. That means they all want something for themselves, some situation. And then it says, sakali ashanta. So ashanta means they're not peaceful. They don't get any peace. But then it gives this bold statement that Krishna Bhakta Nishkam. Nishkam means the Krishna Bhakta doesn't have any desire for him or herself. Krishna Bhakta is thinking how to please Krishna. This is a huge relief. This is actually the best kind of liberation. We can experience it even in this world, even in common ways. If you don't think about yourself, you start thinking about how to do good for others, you'll naturally feel satisfied. It's Dale Carnegie put it in his book, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. He says if you're in the worst anxiety of your life, take a moment and think how you can do good for others. He gives instances where people had horrific things happen to them, and then they took this advice to think, well, how can I go do some service for someone? And they said, hey, I feel better. Because that's our nature. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, another very basic teaching that he gave, that you can just take this one principle and apply it to your life, and you don't have to do intensive study if you just apply this one thing. He said, each individual living entity is an eternal servant of Krishna. Bhaktivinoda follows up on it in a song. He says, Jeev Krishna Das, E Bishwas, Korleto or Dukonai. If you develop an awareness of this, that by serving Krishna, that you'll be happy. Someone comes and tells you, hey, try this. And you just do it. And you develop a sense that this is what I'd like to do with my life. Then he says, for you, no more duk, no more misery in this world. The path of dedication and service. It's perfectly aligned. And you can only have harmony through alignment. If you're not aligned, then you get duk. So, Krishna Bhakta Nishkam. The Bhakta is without any calm. No desire for him or herself. And therefore is happy. So this, in this today's verse, We're describing, Krishna says, Vita, Raga, Bhaya, Krodha. So Vita means that the self-realized person has removed 3 obstacles, and he's naming them. So the first one was Raga. It was an unnecessary and irrational attachment to the material world. Actually, the material world, as far as we are concerned, and I'm speaking from the perspective of being a spiritual soul, an Atma, we're from a higher category of energy. And therefore, the things of this world are what are described as trifles. Please look up the word trifle. In fact, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that in the process of advancing in bhakti, one must give up one's attachment to trifling things and trifling matters. So now we're going to find out what a trifle is, so we don't have to get mixed up with trifles. Do you have any trifles in your life? Okay.
Trifle as a noun means a thing of little value or importance.
A thing of little value
or importance.
Or importance. And where does it come from?
It comes from Middle English, also denoting an idle story told to deceive or amuse. From Old French truffle, which means from by the form of truffe, which means deceit or unknown origin. The verb derives from Old French truffler, which means to mock or to deceive.
Well, that doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
Trifling matters. So the devotee has to become fully aware of the different categories of energy. And one should be aware, first of all, that I'm a higher category of energy than the material world, and I'm incompatible with it. And that I am completely compatible with the spiritual world, in which the predominant active feeling is service to our original divine source, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur then says, if you align yourself with that truth and you develop that mood, it's an attitude. Anybody ever tell you need an attitude adjustment? So if you adjust your attitude like this, and you can do it, and that's the real beauty of being a human. As humans at any time can just decide to change their attitude and say, I'm going to start over, new attitude. You just adjust it. So this is the best of all attitude adjustments, that I'm the servant of the original divine source, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Bishwas, if you develop firm conviction in this, then you'll have no more trouble in life. How's that sound? Better than good. It's fantastic. It's what everyone's looking for, but I'm looking in the wrong direction, the wrong place. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy perfectly aligns me with this attitude. So I'm a servant of Krishna. Just try saying it. Yeah. So raga is the first thing, that unnecessary attachment to anything. It's not mine. It's meant for serving someone else. If you work at a bank and you're a teller, and while you're working you slip $10 into your pocket from the till, how do you feel? Huh? Guilty. What else? Paranoid. And if you take anything, if you took 1 penny, they're going to see you nowadays anyway. There's no walking out of there. Everything's being watched. You even take 1 penny, how do you feel? How does your boss feel, by the way? Or how does the owner of the bank, or the person who's above you, who's trusted you and gave you a job, how do they feel if you take a penny out of the bank? Out of the till, how do they feel? Huh? Yeah, you could lose everything, your reputation. 1 penny, you just slip it in your pocket. That's mine. So bank robbers, they steal things all the time, and then you always wonder, how are they going to enjoy that, right? So there's a way in which the whole idea of trying to get stuff for myself in this world is a fallacy. It just doesn't work. And so the Sri Ishopanishad, which is a very important book to read for those advancing in Bhakti, it gives foundational principles, one of which comes at the very beginning. It says, Ishavasyam idam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bunjita magrada kasiswadanam. Problem solved. No more worries. It says that everything animate or inanimate within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. One should therefore accept only those things necessary for himself, which are set aside as his quota, and one should not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. Problem fixed as far as raga goes, right? So this raga means this unnecessary attachment to trifling things. They're here today, gone tomorrow. They're not mine anyway. It's not my energy. So if you just walk away from them unnaturally, that may not work. But if you understand who they belong to, and this verse I just quoted says, Tena tyaktena bunjita. You accept those things that are naturally given to you as your quota, and you understand how everything is to be used for a higher purpose in service. This solves the problem of raga. It's really the only way to align properly with material desires and attachments in the material world. So that's the first thing. Then the second thing Krishna is saying in this verse that a self-realized person adjusts and eschews from his or her life is bhaya. And bhaya means fear. So I described a little bit that there are some philosophies that teach that the solution to life is to become nothing. So there's a kind of fear, unnatural sense that I have that the material world is a difficult place because of relationships. And the reason is because relationships in the material world are temporary and they're fraught with difficulty. Even the best of circumstances, I'll be separated from my current relationship. I may have love for family, or I may have a pet I love. Whatever relationship I have in this world, it's going to be severed. And therefore I develop a kind of neurosis about relationships in the material world. And so Krishna says, bhaya, you have to give up that fear of relationships and understand that only because you've been engaged in temporary relationships, that's caused the trauma. But there's a real relationship somewhere else that will actually solve the problem. Hema, were you about to ask something or make a point, please?
Thank you for taking my question, Guru Maharaj. So I have two questions. First, you said when you were explaining Bhakti that not to follow materialistic people or things. Was that accurate in my understanding?
Well, that's definitely one aspect of it.
So my question is, as we are trying to develop more and more Krishna Bhakti and we are trying to develop more satsanga, we try to follow senior devotees to see how they're doing so that we can develop more. How do we know it's not materialism and we're doing it the right way? That's one thing.
Well, there's our great teachers and acharyas say that there are 3 points of reference that you should be checking in with regularly as you advance in your spiritual path. So one of them is from the authorized scriptures. So this is important because in any discipline, one has to take axiomatic truth. You have to accept that there's some source of knowledge which is infallible and that is self-luminous. Otherwise, you get into infinite regress and you'll just keep backing up. And you'll just say that, you'll come to absurd philosophies that you can't prove that you exist anyway, so there is no existence and nothing really matters. So in any science, there's some kind of dogma. Dogma is not necessarily a pejorative term. It means that there are sets of knowledge that you can't fully explore yourself. So in any case, the first is that you have to find out what are those sources of knowledge that are axiomatic. So in the context of yoga, we accept the Vedas. And the Vedas have various parts. So the Vedas are a vast project. This is one thing one has to understand about the Vedas. They're addressing all human beings and giving them an opportunity to bring their energy closer and closer to the higher purposes of life. And so there are certain parts of the Vedas that aren't meant for people who are interested in self-realization. But when we come to the Upanishads, they're giving a very clear description of how there's a difference between matter and spirit, and that the purpose of life is something transcendental. And they do it in very abstract ways by saying, if you look at yourself, you'll understand God. Therefore, a lot of people read the Upanishads and they say, aha, I'm God. I figured it out. But what they're actually saying is, look at yourself. Consciousness is the most profound phenomena that you'll find anywhere in this world. It's not like matter at all. It's categorically different. And if you start looking at that, you'll start to see that there's a different reality altogether. And then because there are benevolent personalities who are actually interested in seeing the mass of people understand the Vedas properly. Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva is a generic term, really, but there are various incarnations of Krishna, empowered personalities who come to help edit the Vedas, so to speak, or divide them in certain ways so the population, everyone in the population, can understand them at certain times. So Vyasadeva, our Vyasadeva, has taken the Upanishads and then has summarized them and in sutras. This is called the Vedanta Sutra or Brahma Sutras. And here we get aphorisms, very short, terse descriptions of the difference between matter and spirit and how to attain the ultimate goal of life, what is the ultimate source of everything, and so forth. And then from there, from the Upanishads, for our purposes especially, there's a natural, Vyasadeva gives a natural commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, which is the Srimad Bhagavatam. So therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and I'm sticking with the context of his teachings, he said, Srimad Bhagavatam Pranam Amalam. That the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the fruit of all the Vedic literatures, is the place you should go to understand the axiomatic truth of the Vedas. It's the perfect commentary for us, right? So you have that's one. And the second is that you have Guru. Everyone has to have personal guidance from Guru. So there's different kinds of Guru. Guru really means heavy, somebody who's heavy with knowledge. Somebody who's taken a dip in the ocean of transcendental knowledge and come out kind of soaking wet. And that their life is dedicated to spirit, not matter. You can see it in them. And they're instructing gurus, those who have reached that kind of heaviness in their life spiritually that can guide us. And there's also, we have Diksha gurus, those who can hand over the mantras to us, mystical mantras. And so then there's what we call sadhu. And sadhu means that there's a general body of practitioners who are following the tradition. And we can see how they're doing it. Now, the Shastras recommend that we put these three together. Guru, sadhu, shastra. So if you're drawing a line on a page and you just have one point, it can go in any direction. But there's 3 points on the page, it's going to go in a certain direction. So when you're trying to discern what is the proper path, you look at all three of these things that are at your disposal. And you can then triangulate your way, literally, practically, forward to find find your way forward. You may not always make perfect decisions, but you always know how to refine them as you go forward through Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. That's a very general answer. Thank you for asking.
I have one more question.
Okay.
So as we move from brahmacharya to grahasthashram to vanaprasthashram and then moving towards sannyas towards the end, are we not trying to become nothing? Like, are we trying to not decimate ourselves and I guess involve more and more ourselves in Krishna Bhakti? So is that different from the mukti that is negative? We're
Yes.
trying to disconnect everything and devote ourselves to Krishna more and more as we finish our responsibilities. So is that different from the mukti?
Well, one of the just the meanings of sannyas, let's just look at that term. Oftentimes, if you say that word, especially in India where people know what it means, it sends fear through the household. It's sannyas, like giving up everything. So, but actually, it means anyas. Anyas means where you place something. For instance, when you put on tilak, there are various places that it's supposed to go. And if you know where they go, that's why it's called anyas. You're putting it in the proper places. And sang means complete. So a sannyasi or a renounced person is actually somebody who knows where to put everything. It's not a matter of artificially renouncing anything from the world, but he knows, she knows where everything goes. And Prabhupada talks about those who, even they live in a house and they have a family, but they know how to properly utilize everything. Such a person, he says, is as good as a sannyasi. Because it's not a matter of there's no artificial giving up of anything, but learning how to engage everything properly in Krishna's service. Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions this in his book called Jaiva Dharma. There's a discussion early on where one student is noticing how very advanced this person is, and he says, you should be a sannyasi. And he says that the sannyas it comes from the inside out. It's not a matter of changing externally. There's a natural way when one performs bhakti, one's doing service to Krishna, that one gets knowledge and detachment. The Srimad Bhagavatam says this, Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janaya Yashu Vairagyam Jnanam Cha Yarahaitukam. That when you perform bhakti, give me 2 examples of direct bhakti.
Deity worship.
Yes. One more.
Harinam.
Okay.
Yeah.
Harinam and deity worship. By performing direct process of bhakti like that, then one automatically gets knowledge and detachment. Gyan and vairagya. These come naturally. It's not we have to endeavor for them separately in bhakti. There's a sense of which I'm not interested in things that are of lower nature anymore. This is described in Bhagavatam also, 11th canto. Bhakti parishanu bhava virakti ranyata traisha trika eka kala prapadya manasa yatasnatasus tushti pushti shurapayonugasam. And this verse very conveniently describes bhakti in accord with my favorite activity, which is eating. So it says that when a hungry person eats, he or she feels nourishment, satisfaction, and eradication of hunger. Tushti pushti shudapayanu. Shudapayo means that the hunger goes away. And tushti means satisfaction. Do you feel satisfaction when you eat? And how about nourishment? Pushti, that's pushti. How do you know by the way, how do you know when you're hungry?
Oh, we know.
You just know, right? I thought about that the other day. I was thinking, I'm feeling hungry. It's like, how do I know I'm hungry? It's like, give me something to eat. Like, I'm hungry. So how do you know? You just know, right? So in a similar way, when you eat, how do you know that you're getting full? There's a little meter you have to buy at Rite Aid, right? You put it on your wrist. It's like, okay, you're full now, right? Right? No, say wrong. You're wrong. Yeah. No, you don't you don't need a meter, and you don't need to call anybody. You say, excuse me, I just got to ask a question. Am I full yet? No, you know automatically that you're getting full. Your hunger's going away. And so you also feel that you're getting nourished, and you feel satisfaction while you're doing it. Bhakti is the same way, the verse says. When you align yourself with prapadya manasya, that means that you've discerned that the path of dedication, the path of service, to the original divine source, Krishna's supreme personality of Godhead, who has hands and legs, and he's beautiful, and he can reach out and grab you if he wants. That you dedicating yourself and all your senses to him, in that process, said you'll get, naturally you'll experience bhakti, sense of love, and then also anubhava. You'll see for yourself how Krishna is involved in everything in the material world. You'll see him directly for yourself. As directly as when you eat food, you feel something, right? And then finally, virakti. Virakti means detachment. Anyatatra, for what? Anything that doesn't relate to Krishna. You're not even interested. So when you're full and you've eaten a satisfying meal, right? You've eaten a satisfying meal and you're full, and somebody comes and offers you more. Do you want it? You don't want it. You don't have to philosophize about it. You just say, sorry, I'm not interested, right? So in a similar way, when one is practicing bhakti, one feels full. I feel naturally satisfied. Of course, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, commenting on this verse, says, with bhakti, there's an insatiable appetite for more bhakti. So, but in using this material example of eating, when you're full, it's not a philosophical choice. When somebody offers you more to eat, you say, no, I don't want any more. So similarly, the material desires are no longer appealing to somebody who's practicing bhakti. And the designations of brahmachari and then grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas, these are external. We utilize them as a way in which to, in a general way, stay on track, because the material world is topsy-turvy, in case you haven't noticed. There's a lot of weird stuff that happens here. They mentioned that in the play yesterday several times. When they were with Haridas Thakur, someone said that one of the guards said, "This is weird," and he ran. I think it was a bhai. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on in the material world, and you have to have some framework through which to organize your life to move forward on the path of bhakti. So that's there in a very external way, but the main practice is the direct hearing, chanting, remembering, and so forth that you're practicing in bhakti. And the detachment, that comes naturally in the sense that you're doing something superior, so you're not interested. So vitaraga bhaya, bhaya means that you're no longer afraid of a relationship and think that I want to become nothing. And if you think this is just, there was a guest that was staying at Satyadev Prabhu's house many years ago. She was from Japan. And we had long philosophical conversation with her. She actually wanted to become nothing. That was her goal in life, because she had suffered so much in her life. She just had this intense trauma. And her main goal, she didn't want to entertain any idea of any kind of personal existence. She said, I want to become nothing. So this is due to a hard heart after many years in the material world. So Krishna says, through the process of bhakti, then one has to give up this hard-heartedness and develop a soft heart. Then finally he says, vitaragabhaya krodha. So krodha means anger. And anger arises when one doesn't have proper guidance. Because what happens is, I hear so many conflicting philosophies. Are there people in the world who are willing to offer conflicting philosophies? Yeah, just a couple of them though, right? Anywhere you go, someone will have a different opinion. Even in circle of devotees, someone will say it's like this, no, it's like that. You have to that's why if you're going to move forward in any discipline, you have to have a guru. You have to have somebody say, no, you follow like this. That's why Prabhupada says in the Nectar Devotion, there are different gurus, but then they may, even amongst bona fide gurus, some of them are going to have some different details. Say, no, do it like this, I'm going to do it. But he said, do it like that, just listen over here this way. And the principles, the basic things are always going to be the same. But you have to have some sense that you're following a particular tradition, that you're lined up properly, and you're getting what you need in that tradition. The principles you've studied carefully enough, the details You may defer to a particular individual who's guiding you. And otherwise, krodha means that you become angry because there's so many conflicting philosophies in the world that you become overwhelmed by all of them and just say, oh, forget it, there's nothing. Nobody knows what they're talking about. Have you ever heard that? Shraddha Devidasi and I, with a group of other devotees, we were doing Sankirtan book distribution in Santa Cruz about how many years ago? 6 years ago, and how many months? About 6 years ago, we were doing book distribution, and we met a guy. She's a witness. So I was showing him Bhagavad Gita, and he espoused this philosophy that nobody knows anything, and nothing matters, and so forth. He wasn't telling it to us, he was actually telling it to his 10-year-old daughter who was with him. And he ended up buying a Bhagavad Gita, so I'll just cut to the good part at the end. But in any case, he definitely exhibited this symptom of krodha, that he was angry because there were so many conflicting philosophies apparently in his mind, that he just said that I don't believe in anything. And this is altogether possible. Someone just said, I don't believe in anything. Become agnostic. I don't know. There's too many different things going on. So Krishna this says this will never do. You have to give this up too. This idea of being angry because so many conflicting thoughts. Find an authentic source of knowledge and educate yourself. And then find people who are following it and see if it did anything for them. And then get yourself a person who's an expert in it, like a lawyer who's studied it back and forth, and say, can you guide me through this thing? You can make it. Krishna's saying, that's what he's saying in these various verses. There's another verse in the Gita where he uses this terminology, Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha Manmaya Mamupashta. Bhavo Jnana Tapasa Putamad Bhagava Bhavam Agata. He said, don't worry, many people have done this. He said that although there are these three obstacles, he said many people have become purified by the process of bhakti, and they've attained the perfection, and they've given up these three stumbling blocks. So here the description is of the person who has reached the state of steady consciousness, self-realization, and that person has definitely overcome these three: raga, bhaya, krodha, right? So the last part of the verse says stitadhir munir uchite. This is called a person who's steady in mind. Steady in mind. So here's the verse, translation. One who is not disturbed in mind, even amidst the threefold miseries, or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a sage of steady mind. And we covered all those different aspects, didn't we? Yes. Please say yes. Yes. Thank you. Purport. Would you like to hear the purport? Yes. The word muni means one who can agitate his mind in various ways for mental speculation without coming to a factual conclusion. It is said that every muni has a different angle of vision, and unless a muni differs from other munis, he cannot be called a muni in the strict sense of the term. Na sa vrishir yasya matam nabinam, Mahabharata says. But a stita deer muni, as mentioned herein by the Lord, is different from any ordinary muni. The stita deer muni is always in Krishna consciousness, for he has exhausted all his business of creative speculation. He is called Prashanta Nishesha Manoratantara. That's from the Stotra Ratna. Where's it from? So you can tell all your friends. I know something from the Stotra Ratna. Or one who has surpassed the stage of mental speculation and has come to the conclusion that Lord Sri Krishna or Vasudeva is everything. Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. He is called a muni fixed in mind. Such a fully Krishna-conscious person is not at all disturbed by the onslaughts of the threefold miseries, for he accepts all misery as the mercy of the Lord, thinking himself only worthy of more trouble due to his past misdeeds, and he sees that his miseries, by the grace of the Lord, are minimized to the lowest. Similarly, when he is happy, he gives credit to the Lord, thinking himself unworthy of the happiness. He realizes that it is due only to the Lord's grace that he is in such a comfortable condition and able to render better service to the Lord. And for the service of the Lord, he is always daring and active and is not influenced by attachment or aversion. We were at that cow conference today, and Bhakti True Swami was introducing Bhakti Raghava Swami. And one of the things he mentioned was during an altercation in Mayapur in the 1970s, he got his leg blown off because people were attacking the temple. So Bhakti Raghava charged at him, and they threw a bomb at him, blew his leg off. What he didn't tell you, that was he already had one bad leg. He lost his good leg. He lost his good leg. But the thing that's noteworthy is he didn't miss anything. He just got right back. He travels all over the world, one leg. He never said a word about it. He just got back up and kept doing his service. That's a stita tir muni. It's not whatever the situation is in the material world. He just readjusts and goes on in the mood of service. Attachment means accepting things for one's own sense gratification. What does attachment mean? Like if you're working at a bank and you pull out something out of the till and you put it in your pocket. That's what sense gratification is like. And detachment is the absence of such sensual attachment. But one fixed in Krishna consciousness has neither attachment nor detachment because his life is dedicated to the service of the Lord. Consequently, he is not at all angry even when his attempts are unsuccessful. Success or no success, a Krishna conscious person is always steady in his determination. So just not having any attachment isn't good enough. That's one of the last points in this purport. In fact, it's one that Narada Muni mentions when he's speaking to his disciple Srila Vyasadeva. And he says, what does he say? What verse am I thinking in my head, please? Naishkarmyam apyachuta bhava varjitam, nashobate jnanam alam niranjanam, kutakpana shashvada bhadramishvare, nacharpitam karma yarapyakarnam. So Narada Muni says, this is Kumbh Mela? Starting? Kumbh Mela. So he says, even if you attain self-realization, but you don't have the sense of dedication to Krishna, our divine source, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If you don't have that sense, if it hasn't awakened within your heart, then he said that kind of self-realization, it doesn't have any taste. There's no taste to it. It's just that you've attained a temporary state of not being attached to certain things. And see, the thing is with living entities, and this is very, very clearly pointed out in all the Bhakti literatures, we're after bliss. That's what we want. We want happiness. In fact, people want it in a pill. You know, so start getting old and they don't feel the same. They'll take some kind of hormone or whatever to feel, we want to feel good. We want to feel not just good, we want to feel bliss. People try all kinds of things because it's the nature of the living entity to seek bliss. Ananda mayo bhyasat. And unless you get that, then you won't feel satisfied. So Narada says that just the kind of self-realization where you are able to detach yourself from the material world, it says it's nashobate jnanam alam niranja. It's not beautiful. It's not pleasing. Kutakpana shashvara bhadram ishvare. What to speak, he says, of material activities which are always inauspicious from beginning to end. Because there's karma involved. You're going to get involved in the material world and get ground up again in the material nature. So that's just stupidity. And after that, self-realization that doesn't have the feeling for God, for achyuta, some natural feeling where there's a spring in your step because you want to do more service for him. That if you don't have that, then it's not very attractive. It's not something that you're going to like. And living entities have to like things. Now we'll take some reflections. Anything that you heard that stuck in your mind? Yes.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj, for wonderful class and so many points. But one definitely, this Muni example. The Muni Prabhupada says, like in corporate, they're like suppose you're in design team, algorithm team. So there will be two person developing the same algorithm. They might be developing the same thing, but they'll have different opinion. And one person will tell, no, your algorithm is not right, my algorithm is right. Though they might be doing the same things. I was just remembering when Muni.
Happens everywhere. I used to bother me to no end that there was Microsoft and there was Apple. Why two? And of course, nowadays they're a little less troublesome because it's a little. It used to be, it was either this or that, and somebody send you something and it's like that doesn't work with this one. It's like, why does there have to be two? Then I started noticing there's two of everything, at least. Everyone's got to have their own thing, their own platform, and that's the material world. And if you realize that's the way it works, and in the realm of philosophy, everyone said, no, I have to have an original philosophy and follow that. Right? That's what you're saying?
And in the starting you're mentioning that how everyone like moving like one place, but then every time moving to other places. So I saw that one billboard in 101, it was there that now fare is so low that you can move anywhere. It's there somewhere written. Some airlines was broadcasting that now fare is so low.
So where'd they tell you to go?
That's what, but just no one knows, but they just find that.
No, I mean, but they do tell you to go places, right? Like I saw, what do they have along the 101? Where does they say to go? Okay, well, Bangkok, I know United had one for a while to Japan, but guaranteed you go to Japan, someone's going to tell you to go somewhere else. You get to Japan and there's some other, go Asiana and go back to Hong Kong. It's like, is it Japan or Hong Kong? What do you want? You go to Hong Kong, guaranteed there's going to be a billboard somewhere there saying, fly, what do they got going on in Hong Kong? Cathay. Cathay's going to say, we go to where? Australia. And you get down under and you figure out you're out of sync with the rest of the world because Australia is like, it's not in anybody's time zone. And it's, the water goes backwards in the sink. You go, this is crazy. I got to get out of here. And then there's a sign that says, go back to California. You get to California. It's like, hey, you got to go to Northern California. This is the material world. This is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Brahmanda Brahmate Kon Bhagyavan Jeev. You're wandering here. You're going from one place to the next. Everyone's saying, here, try this, try that. He says, stop it. Stop this nonsense. Find out where your real happiness is. It's in self-realization. And it's in finding service. That's noble. Service is noble. Just giving stuff up, it doesn't work. You have to be noble. You actually have to feel noble, that I'm serving the best, I'm serving the greatest. And then you'll feel satisfied. Then you can stick to it and have a life, a real life. Yes?
I really like the point of how Prabhupada, so nicely he says that you can't renounce something that you don't have. When I was growing up, I was studying in a school which propagates impersonalism, and we actually had the monks there help us, have these classes on moral instruction, and we used to practice, meditate on nothing, try to achieve that state of desirelessness. But when I read Prabhupada's, explanation that how can you renounce something you don't have, that just was, just like an arrow pierced my heart. So much right on target.
Yes, a perfect alignment. You can only have a harmony through alignment. And what to speak of the illogical idea of thinking of nothing. Negation is also a thought. It's also something. So even if you're thinking that I'm going to become nothing, that's something too. There is no nothing. Kameshri and then Hema.
I was remembering you were mentioning about how people think they are God and various mental speculations. I was remembering at one time in Harinam some time back, I was showing Bhagavad Gita to a person, and then he asked few questions, and one question he asked is this about God? Then I said yes, and then he looked right, he looked left, and he said, I don't tell this generally to everybody, but I want to tell you I am God. Then I didn't say anything. Then he said, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that this guy is crazy. I said, no, actually, I didn't just expect to meet God this evening. I said, no, I'm listening. Then he said, okay, that sounds better. Otherwise, people judge so much. Then I couldn't give a Bhagavad Gita to him. He did not accept one. He kept on going so many things that, he is speculating so much. And I really felt that there's so much confusion and which direction a person could go without a proper guidance. And I really like the one point you made today. If you start drawing a line, then you can go any which direction. But if you have reference points, then you can actually draw a shape. Like you mentioned about 3 points, Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. So if you know where to go, then you have, with those reference points, actually you have a proper guidance. So that's what something stuck to me, and yeah.
Such nice points, thank you. And always interesting to hear from the field what's going on. Prabhupada was in the field also, and he mentioned many instances like that. But one basic point that he made often was that in sciences, we expect to be asked to study something carefully before we can actually see it in the right context, or see it at all for that matter. I mean, there are certain kind of phenomena that only the trained eye can see, certainly in various hard sciences. If you go and look at a petri dish or a microscope or something like that, unless you're trained to understand what it is, you'll have no idea what you're looking at. And he would muse at the fact that people would just think that automatically they would understand the science of God without studying it, without looking at the details, and without applying themselves to it. You have to apply yourself to certain bodies of knowledge and discipline in order to be able to understand them. So he said, certainly, with the highest science of understanding our original divine source, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that we would have to go deeply within the matter and have various authoritative sources to glean from. But people, as you said, are very want to speculate in wild ways, right? Thank you. And then we're coming up here to Shraddha with the internet. You have a point too? Okay.
Thank you. I really like the point about Muni. In today's world, if you think about who are the Munis, it seems like it's the PhDs, because they have to come out with a different hypothesis on top of somebody else's work. They have to build up on something. Even if they know that the hypothesis is going to be disproved, they have to say something different. But especially in relation with our context, how to think of Munis and how the way you explained it was
yeah, we
resonated.
Plagiarize like anything. That's our stock and trade. In the sense that we're asked to, when we're teaching, we pass on the same knowledge as we've heard it, basically. In fact, in a way that's relevant to the audience. Prabhupada describes this in the Srimad Bhagavatam as realization. Realization means that you don't try to surpass the previous acharyas. This is different in the Munis. They will try to come up with something more unique or nuanced to outdo what others have done. And absolutely happens in the academic world. Unless you come up with a unique idea, then you're just like, oh, you're just following that person. You just give something new. But we don't come up with anything new. In fact, was Prabhupada's mantra practically, that we're not inventing this. We're simply presenting. We're only messengers of what's being passed down to us. However, he did say that you must be able to represent it in such a way without changing it or trying to overcome or surpass, rather, the previous acharyas, but you should say it in such a way that it's relevant to the sensibilities of the present company that you're in, so they can understand it properly. And that's called realization. Nice point you made, thank you. Okay. Some devotees are checking in from online. We'll hear from them now.
So there are two comments, Maharaj, online on relating to sannyas. So Priti Radhika Dasi, she says, amazing. Never knew the definition of sannyas so properly before. That is to completely put everything where it belongs. And we have Bhakt Ankit from New York. So this is Ankit Vora from New York, Bhakti Center. I have a question. I was reading 16th chapter Bhagavad Gita, verses 1 to 3. There, some qualification of a sannyasi is given, and Prabhupada says a sannyasi should be completely dependent on Krishna, and he should be fearless, and he further mentions that this comes by realization that a living entity is never alone, and he's always accompanied by Paramatma in his heart, and he will always give protection. I have a question that why a sannyasi is mentioned in that verse as a reference, whereas the verse describes the qualification of a devotee. Is that we all, irrespective of our ashram, are supposed to develop a consciousness of a sannyasi, that is, be completely dependent on Krishna?
Yes, at various stages of our life, we engage in the surrendering process, and that includes seeing how Krishna is my maintainer, and also that he's my maintainer and protector. Yeah, so everyone who's in the process of bhakti must cultivate this. It's part of the process, sixfold process of surrender called Sharanagati. And in the description of sannyasi, it's especially relevant to that stage of life. In other words, one who would accept sannyas, which means in the varnashram context, there's a way in which one just depends on Krishna without any other consideration. It's the idea of a sannyasi. And definitely for that stage of life, one must have a full realization that if I just engage in the process of bhakti without any other cares, then I will, that is sufficient. In fact, that begins in the brahmachari ashram. Brahmacharis in the beginning of life are, if one is lucky to have this kind of training, a brahmachari lives without any possessions, and whatever the brahmachari gets, he gives it to the spiritual master. And this is really nice kind of life because you don't have any worries. You're simply engaged in service. And typically most brahmacharis then go into the grihastha ashram, and however, they carry that with them, realization that Krishna's nicely maintaining. In fact, one of the nice contrasts between a brahmachari ashram and the grihastha ashram is once a brahmachari takes to the grihastha ashram, he may realize that now there's a lot of extra unnecessary burdens on me that I didn't have before. And that one remembers with happiness the simple life of having no other cares except for service 24 hours a day and no sense of proprietorship whatsoever. And then at a certain point of life, one can move into the idea of vanaprastha, which is kind of like after one's been engaged in the material world for some time, there are things that stick to you. And it requires a little unsticking. So vanaprasthas are meant to use that period of time to get ready for a full practical exhibition of not being attached to anything. But in any case, in reference to your question, it's especially, those qualities are especially applicable to a sannyasi, but they're relevant for everybody who's in bhakti because it's part of the surrender process. And was there something else? Okay.
You mentioned the beauty of being a human being is that we can always do an attitude adjustment. That is, come to the thought and realize that we are eternally servants of Krishna. So thank you for sharing that, Maharaj.
Yeah, attitude adjustment. Yes.
Hare Krishna. I like the point where you spoke about the pendulum and the balance between the bhoga and the tyaga, and it's so important not to be in either direction but to have the balance. I could quickly connect because recently we saw a movie as a family about Sant Tukaram, where he had a brother who was very much renunciate, even though he was in the family life and he didn't take care of his family. He was always in the scriptures, whereas Tukaram, he was actually forced to be with the family more because his brother was not doing anything. He was forced. Later on, the parents died, and Tukaram realized that there is a supreme personality and there is something supreme powerful. But still, he wrote a lot of books, a lot of realizations about God. At the same time, he balanced his family. So towards the end, he met his brother, and his brother had read his poems that were so popular in Maharashtra at that time. And his brother actually told him that, I wish I could have done it like how you did, where you had your family also and you have risen so high in your knowledge and your poems are so popular. So even in our life, instead of trying to renunciate everything, if we can keep that balance, it is so important. I really appreciated that point.
Yes, thank you. Much to the point, there's a way in which one has to... The Varnashram really is meant so that one can be balanced enough to perform spiritual life with full alacrity. If you're out of balance, then you can't stay steady in your practice. And we have certain psychophysiological predilections and natures. And the Varnashrama, this division of society, is meant so that we can live according to what's comfortable enough for us to have full strength in order to do spiritual life. And there's no sense in one ashram is not better than the other. They're all meant to give one this sense of balance in the material world, so that you can actually go on with your spiritual life. Prabhupada brings this up in the 8th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, his commentary about Gajendra, because Gajendra was a big, strong elephant, and when he stepped into the lake, he got caught by a crocodile, and then there was a fight. And then the crocodile started to win. So it's always interesting to analyze which animal's going to win. I see this all the time at Govardhan. Does dog beat monkey or monkey beat dog? And cows, they're unflappable. They always beat the monkeys and everybody else. If they're going for something, they just like, get out of here. All right. So the monkey, we had the crocodile and the elephant fighting. And so then the commentary, the Bhagavatam says, normally elephant's stronger than crocodile. But in the water, crocodile beats elephant. So now Gajendra is out of his element. He's in the water, so he's being defeated, and he knows he's being defeated. So then Prabhupada used that opportunity to explain that everybody who's practicing bhakti must also have a sensual strength. Your senses have to be strong. I have a godbrother. I just saw him. He's here today somewhere. I don't think he's at the temple. He's probably still at the cow conference. Nrsingananda Prabhu, I saw him in Las Vegas when I went for the temple opening there. I said, Nrsingananda, you look fantastic. How come you always look so good? You always look, like healthy, young, everything like that. He's older than I am. So he just kind of smiled. He didn't say anything. Then he wrote me a letter when I got home. He said, I'll tell you what it is, but you have to answer my riddle. He said, it's a natural element, but it's not. It's something natural, but it's not pure air or pure water. What is it? And he said, I have no idea. You better tell me. I don't have time for games. So he wrote back a long letter, and he said, it's sleep. He said, so many devotees are sleep deprived because they think I'll just be renounced and I'll sleep fewer and fewer hours, and then they can't even stay awake in japa. Your mind has to be strong. So he was saying it's like you have to have a natural amount of sleep for your brain to function properly. It's a machine, and if you don't take care of it, I'm not advocating, but I'm advocating that you should get enough sleep. And by doing that, you have central strength, including mental strength, to be able to practice bhakti. There's nothing worse than sitting down to chant japa, especially with the group of devotees, and all of a sudden your mind just shuts off. Have you ever had this happen? You sit down and chant japa. Thank you, Srivas Prabhu. He's such an example for all of us. So, and then all of a sudden your mind just goes, no, I'm going to sleep now. You go, we're not sleeping now, we're chanting. And the mind says, no, I'm tired, I'm going to sleep. That's horrible. But if you get the right amount of sleep and then you sit down and chant japa, you could pray, you can lean into it, you could call out, and you can listen to the syllables, you can hear it. So this is an example, somebody artificially, and believe it, well, I grew up in ISKCON in the 70s. We tried everything. We really did. I mean, eating once a day, just some puffies for a long time. And then, not sleeping, barely anything at all. And there were a lot of disasters, including serious ones with people crashing on the road. Prabhupada would write, he wrote, he said every driver has to have a certain amount of sleep and so forth. So this is just an example. But one has to be reasonable when one's practicing yoga. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, yukta hara viharasya, yukta cheshtasya karmasu, yukta swapna vabodasya, yogo bhavati dukkha. So he said, if you're going to practice yoga, he said, you have to, don't get too much sleep and don't get too little sleep. Don't recreate too much, but don't recreate too little. And he said, don't eat too much, but don't eat too little either. You got to be yukta or balanced in this. So the Varnashram is meant to give us a slot for where we are in a particular time of life, and that changes, except in very rare circumstances. People have been through things in their last life, they have certain samskars, that it doesn't matter what your particular station in life is. What matters is your ability to practice bhakti to the best of your ability right now, in whatever situation. Because in Krishna's eyes, and you'll see this in the Bhagavatam over and over again, it's the people who are sincere that he really notices. And it doesn't matter where you live or what you wear, that doesn't change things for Krishna. He sees your sincerity. And that's something that Prahlad Maharaj notices right at the outset when he begins praying to Lord Nrsingadev. He's thinking like, I'm unqualified. How am I going to offer prayers? I'm standing here before God. And then he thinks of Gajendra, the elephant. He says, Bhaktya tutosha bhagavan gajayutapaya. He thought of the king of the elephant. He said, he is an elephant. He's an animal. But he had sincerity in his heart, and he tried as hard as he could to pray to God. And he just lifted up his trunk and he let it fly. And he just said everything from his heart, please save me. And he said, even Gajendra said in his prayers, he said, normally devotees don't ask you for anything. But I'm just, I'm stuck here. And I'm a materialistic person, but still I'm sincere. Please come save me. And Narayan heard it and he came and saved him. So Prahlad said, okay, this is the principle. Be sincere. And if you're sincere, no matter who you are, you can be an animal. It's okay. If you're sincere for bhakti, then Krishna will come and get you. He'll come pick you up. He hears that really clearly, that sound of sincerity. So get enough rest. Okay, so now we're going to have a kirtan because we have a few minutes left. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Sri Mate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavari Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaur Haribo. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Now for a second part of our program, we're going to clear the floor for all the asanas, put them in the back. And if you care to dance, this is a good time. Never miss a chance to dance. If you have a chance to dance, dance. If you can't dance physically, then dance in your heart. But we'll stand before the deities, and you can raise your arms in the air or however you dance, and dance to the Kirtan. This is a highly recommended form of bhakti that is very expressive of devotion. And we'd like to thank Vaikuntanath Prabhu and his wife Banu who have come here. Vaikuntanath Prabhu is one of the first devotees in the ISKCON movement. He's being undemonstrative, so you don't know who he is, but he's right there with the glasses. He's offering his pranams to everybody. But please let's welcome in his wife, who's sitting in the back, Banu. A little more, though. It's Vaikuntanath. Come on. He wrote a book about his time with Prabhupada. He joined so early. He had so many pastimes with Prabhupada, setting up printing presses and all the early things. And he's been a stalwart devotee all these years. And somehow he and his wife come here to share their association with him. So please try to take advantage while you can. Gaur Premanande Haribo. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhaktivinoda